That's James's beautiful chocolate donut waffle deck dinner made from this mix. I'll talk about that in a moment.
The fruit didn't come with mix.
Nope. And Merlin, the complete series. But actually, I'll talk about that a little bit too, because it's not the complete series. It's volume 2 of the complete series, because I borrowed it from the library. So I'm going to grab that. And first I will say I haven't tried this and I won't try it because I can't eat chocolate anymore. So this one's all for James. Even though my favorite donut used to be Robin's Donuts double chocolate.
Well, you went to Robin's, eh?
Yeah, I love it.
I used to go there and do
I know.
research.
You told me. And they'd give you free coffee. You said there was a very nice young
there was
lad.
a nice guy. It was the stuff that was left over.
Yeah.
He was making new coffee, so it was really strong. You know,
And
you
James
put
didn't even like coffee.
No, but it kept me going. I just have
he
one.
liked what
I'd
the guy
nurse
gave
it for about 7 hours.
Yeah.
I'd put in almost like this was after work, so I'd already put in maybe 9 hours of work at the coffee shop, and then. But coffee was so old that the spoon would almost like stick up when you stuck it. And then he'd give me the old sweet nothings that were left over from the previous
lovely.
day.
Donut holes. So, which really, honestly, all you really need is a donut. You don't need a whole big donut.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, anyway, the double chocolate had a chocolate coating on top, which was really nice. And I didn't like when Robin's Donuts closed down here in Lethbridge, I was upset. I thought, oh no, is Robin's Donuts done? Because that's the best double chocolate. And they made great coffee too, which I also can't have anymore. But but those were my favorite things: double chocolate, donut, and coffee. So wonderful for Robin's Donuts. And then I went to Tim Hortons, and it wasn't nearly as good.
And you were saying
McDonald's has better coffee.
McDonald's,
but I can't have any coffee anymore, so it doesn't matter. But
that just shocked me because everything else McDonald's puts out,
but it was good,
is about as classy as Ronald McDonald himself.
Yeah. But anyway, so I went to Winnipeg to work one summer, and they had Robin's Donuts there, and I was really excited because I was looking forward to the coffee and double chocolate donut. Not as good. I don't know why. It was wonderful in Grand Prairie. It was wonderful here. Not good in Winnipeg. And that was the one that stayed open. I don't know why. Anyway.
You know what they had that was good in Winnipeg though? Sugar milk. Remember that?
Oh yeah, that was good. James liked that. So, and that's where we discovered Bulk Barn, because we didn't have Bulk Barn here yet. They had it there, but Winnipeg's
that
Bar
recent?
Baker
My
sent
God.
it. Yeah. So anyway, this donut mix, it's just like buying a cake mix or whatever, as I imagine it would be, because it's cake donut, right? So I just dumped it in the bowl, and last time I had some sort of a vanilla, I guess, donut, and which was amazing, and I had some of that. But I'd put too much water, and so I put ground almonds in to, sop up some of the moisture, and that worked out so well that I just did that on purpose with this. I put too much water and I sopped up with ground almonds because I knew it worked for the other one so well that I thought, wow, this is a good chance to get some almonds in James's diet, if nothing else, right? So
yeah, almonds are healthy. I used to eat a lot of nuts.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Okay, so this starts with season 4 and ends with season 5. There's just season 4 and 5 in this volume 2. When I first...
Is this the young Merlin yet?
Yeah, when I first watched this Merlin series, when it started, I was excited to see it and then so disappointed. They had, what's her name? Guinevere is mixed race, probably supposed to look or seem more African or whatever, but she's very fair skin actually. But
her name means white wave.
There you go.
Gosh.
And
I'm not making
they
it up.
had- okay.
Jennifer is a version of that sort.
that's okay. So they have her there, and I'm like, okay, that's silly. And then there's just a whole lot of silliness, and it didn't really follow the. I mean, they had the characters, and they had, placed at a certain time, whatever. But really, I was so turned off by it. I just didn't watch it. And then I decided, oh well, I don't have anything to get from the library. I may as well grab this. So, because I hadn't seen it. It starts with season 4. So I watched these 2 while I was doing all those paintings. So, as you know, I like to watch fiction while I'm doing paintings, because I don't actually watch it a lot of the time. I'm watching my paintings, but I'm listening to it. And I get a lot of work done, or writing poetry. And I didn't used to be able to write poetry with any noise. It was too distracting for me. But eventually, like, I'd get frustrated with James because he's very chatty. But now, like, I decided, okay, well, I have to overcome this, so I'm going to make sure that I write with noise in the background. And I think I started with audio, on DVD or CD, and then I went to the shows. So that's what I've been doing. Now, the story really gets interesting. Season 4 and 5, that was interesting. Now, they have made completely different stories off of the basic idea of King Arthur and whatever. And you see the round table in here, and there is I can see how they've rewritten Arthur to be like, basically they wrote him to be an English Jesus, honestly. Maybe not as nice as Jesus. Had some problems. A little bit mean to Merlin. But it's they did have some interesting stories. So, and the round table, you get the idea of, well, King Arthur, he's sitting at a round table with all of his knights, so basically they're all equal. He thinks of them as equal, right? So you have that, and so there's the equality thing, and although he's still a king, right? But, and then marrying Guinevere, mixed race woman, and eventually, spoiler alert, she becomes queen because he dies in the end, and she's left to rule. He leaves her with the royal seal.
That happens every so occasionally.
Yeah. So
Catherine the Great had I don't know if the guy died. He's kind of weak-minded and stuff like that. She was kind of, I don't know, she bumped him up. There was a queen of Egypt who got the record. But the Hittites were fighting the Egyptians, kind of like in Syria.
I have to go deal with a waffle. I'll be back. You keep talking.
Borderline Lebanon. And she actually asked the Hittite king, wrote a letter to him, asking him to send him a son to be her king. She was saying she didn't want to marry a commoner in Egypt. Now, they figured that was, that she was talking about King Tut. The King Tut. But I suspect she was talking about one of the predecessors of King Tut. She doesn't mention the name of it. Commoner she's supposed to marry. I think it was actually Akhenaten. And I do that, say that based on Assyrian material and stuff like that. That's what makes the time frame. Anyway, I'll just mention a bit. Pauline said English. Arthur's actually British, not English. So the British people kind of like our. That's why they call it Great Britain, because it includes Ireland, Scotland, Wales. The British people, are Celtic, and they're more closely related, at least if you look at the languages, to Latin. So the root vir means kind of like man in Latin, fir in Irish. Yeah, they're related. Maybe you don't, but you should be. Whereas, well, in the Germanic languages, it's weir is in werewolf. That means man-wolf, W-E-R. Maybe that's not the best example.
Yeah, but I guess James already got into that. So I was going to say this would be fine, that they've messed with the story and all that sort of thing, if this was their own history, if this was British history. Or if, I guess the English people like to present Arthur as being totally fictional, not a king at all.
It's awful.
Which is really offensive.
It is. It's almost as offensive as what most of the scholarly world has done with the Jewish tradition. The prevailing opinion seems to be, at least in religious studies, is the Jews picked up their religion from the Babylonians during their captivity, there after 586 BC. If you did that with native, if you were at university and said that about indigenous religions, you'd get witch hunted out of your position so fast. It's not funny. Well,
so I was going to say too that it's not only offensive to the people of King Arthur's ancestry or whatever, or people that are ancestors of the people who he was king of, or whatever. James will explain this all better. But it's actually offensive to African Americans that they decided to put Guinevere as looking like a, well, it's just mixed race, obviously, but she presented as an African.
Does she have a British accent?
Yeah.
That's the weird thing. She'd be African European.
Sure.
Jesus, I don't know what the
appropriate term is, but
just call them
doesn't
Africans.
make sense. Well, why? I mean, if they've already immigrated. But the fact is, there are historical, like, to write them into, like, you could say, okay, well, I think this is fictional, so write it in. Okay, that way, okay, fine. Then, but if you say this is actual history and writing people in to history that actually weren't there, it's dismissing their history, their ancestors' history, to have them written in incorrectly into somebody else's. It doesn't make any sense. It just shows your own ignorance when you write in other people into your own historical dramas or whatever, when you should be looking into theirs. If you want to write them into something, look into theirs. Or, I mean, there's, like James was telling me about, there were cases where you could say, oh, well, who knows, maybe some African people immigrated back then or whatever. Not there. But there are cases in history where there were African warriors who were fighting alongside other places. Like James was telling me about this war with the Assyrians, and because he likes to talk about Egypt and Assyria and all that, right? So maybe he'll talk about that.
Okay.
So he can give you a little bit, an idea of, oh, maybe I should write that into a story, because
just a little
it's a
while after this,
a real African warrior who was a hero in real Western history, I guess.
Well,
So,
there's supposed to have been an Ethiopian Trojan War
well, there you go.
fighting against the Greeks.
So, I mean, they were present, real heroes present. You could write them in, write stories for them. If you want to bring in a little more color into your actors
Do that.
portrayed on screen, do it. That'd be great.
I mean, the Assyrians were the biggest, probably had the most powerful empire ever.
Mm-hmm.
About 700 BC.
Mm-hmm.
In Egypt, the main people fighting them
You
were
have
actually
15 minutes. It looks like you have lots
they
to
were
get through.
black people. The Egyptians drew them. These guys set themselves up as pharaohs, more out of the southern part of Egypt, the southern capital. But they were the Greeks called them Ethiopians, but they're really coming from the Sudan, so directly south of Egypt. Ethiopia is kind of southeast of the Sudan. So yeah, don't go around making things up. It's it's frankly racist when you do that. And it's shameful when Pauline points it out, when you got English folks appropriating the stories of people they conquered. Arthur, that's a kind of like a Celtic name. It means bear. I guess it's related to Ursus in Latin, and I think Arcturus, which we use in English for the name of a star, up in Auriga or Auriga. I'm not sure where the accent comes in there. It's near Taurus, constellation Taurus. If you're scanning the skies, I think that's where Arcturus is. Have I got it right? No, I've got it wrong. Arcturus, the bear. I'll figure it out. Kind of still, I fell asleep. But it's not an Ursa Major or minor Arcturus. Yeah, what am I thinking of? Capella is the big star in Auriga or Auriga. Trying to think just offhand of where Arcturus is. I'm glitching. Anyway, Arthur, it means the bear, and it's not an English name. It's Celtic. As I was saying, the Celtic languages seem to be more closely related to Latin than to the Germanic languages. English is a Germanic language. But it's shameful when they're appropriating this. The scholars' general opinion is that Arthur was just legendary. They're probably going around saying mythic. Myth. And yet, there are sources that say, oh, it's just made up in the Middle Ages, No. There are things, I think they're called triads. They were written by, I guess they were preserved in the Welsh tradition. And Arthur isn't this big head king or in these triads, but they seem to think he existed. Check it out. I think it's triads, what they call it. But I suspect there was something like an Arthur, and he ended up losing to the Brits and stuff like that. The Celtic myth or legend was that he was going to come back. Whatever, he'd gone off to the west. Fat chance of that. I mean, the Celts used to be throughout much of Europe. So when you go to, what is it called, Galicia, I think? In Spain, the Celts were there. See how it's got the G and the L in it? That's kind of like Gaelic. You see what I'm saying? Maybe don't. Then Galatia. You ever heard of that book in the Bible called Galatians? It's in the New Testament. Paul, the apostle, or as the Roman Catholics call him, Saint Paul, wrote a letter to them. Just one letter. Wrote a couple to the Corinthians, I think, and the people in Thessalonica, wrote a couple to them. But only one to the Galatians, only one to the Ephesians. But Galatia, if Ephesus was in kind of like Western Turkey, Galatia, that was a city. Galatia was a kind of like a state. And you see how it's got a G and an L in there? Yeah, that's kind of like around the middle part of Turkey, or where their capital is, Ankara or Ankara, or however you pronounce it. Yeah. And I'm not sure when they moved in there, according to what the so-called experts think. Maybe 250 BC or something. 250 years before Jesus and Paul. Maybe a little bit more than that. 300 in case of Paul. Because Paul survived Jesus by quite a few years. Maybe almost 30 years. Yeah, it came to a sad end as well. I think it was over more quickly. I think he was beheaded. Jesus suffered for a few hours. Anyway. But yeah, you can find the Assyrians fighting against black folks. The story goes that there were Ethiopians fighting the Greeks in Troy. Now, did the Trojan War occur? Yeah, okay, it's been over 100 years. There was a guy called Schliemann, who was an archaeologist of some description or another, and he found what looks to be Troy. And they misdated it. They're going around saying, oh, like Troy, they're so bad. I mean, there shouldn't be any problem with the chronology. So, the story goes that the Greeks took out part of the wall. And you'd think, when you're looking at the archaeology of the thing, you'd look for a place where the wall got thumped out in the direction that they're talking about. But no, that's at the wrong level for them. So what they say is the city that's described as being so powerful and rich in the Iliad, written by Homer, that's just made up. It was a povertatious little collection of hovels. You see, what they got wrong is they're figuring that there's all sorts of destruction over the Middle East. And they say, the sea people's done it! The sea people's done it! That's the Greeks, okay? And the funny thing is, the sea peoples did it to their own selves. Because Greece kind of went into what they call I think, the Dark Age for 500 years. And, it's so bad, like in Turkey, Ekrem Akargul, or whatever his name was, he used to head the archaeological endeavors in Turkey, maybe more than 50 years ago. He said, this is for 300 years, there'd be, like dark really in the middle and kind of twilight, one side or the other. I can't find a stick of archaeological material anywhere in the central part of Turkey for 300 years. Yeah, that's because the chronology is wrong. But what they do is they find these destruction layers and they say, it's the sea peoples. And the trouble is, in Greece, it's the Doric people. It's the invasion of the Dorians. You ever heard of a Doric column? They had three major columns and capitals at the top of a column. Capital means something like head, derived from the word head, in, I presume, Latin. Yeah, it's something like cephalo or something like that in Greek. But capital. Maybe you can't see how they're related. That's too bad. Anyway, the cephalic index, that indicates, whether you're dolichocephalic or brachycephalic, broad-headed or long-headed. Anyway, the Dorians invaded, and that was supposed to be 2 generations after the Trojan War. You know how that is? After the Trojan War. They've got it wrong. The sea peoples were stomping around Egypt 2 generations, in Troy, initially, the Sea Peoples are Greeks. Troy, and then they came sweeping down, and they made it all the way to Egypt. They lost there, but that's the way we go. How do we know? Ramses III recorded the loss. The funny thing is, the Assyrians recorded it too, almost 500 years later. But you see, the Assyrian chronology is pretty sober at that point in time. And that's 712 BC. And they record stomping a Greek guy. They call him variously, I think it's Yatna and Yamani. Yamani just means Ionian. And Yatna might be something like his personal name, or it might mean Danan, which is another name for Greek. Anyway, where does he go? He goes running off through Egypt to the Sudanese, the Cushites, as they call them in the Bible, and the Assyrians called them that too. Cush, present-day Sudan. He goes running off to them, and he's running from the Assyrians, and the Assyrians are the most powerful entity in the world at that point in time. And they could go pretty well anywhere they want. It's like, where does a 2,000-pound bear sleep? Anywhere he wants, or however much. The grizzlies don't get that big, but 800 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty big too.
Where does an 800-pound grizzly sleep? Anywhere he wants. Where did the equivalent of 800-pound grizzlies in armor and helmets and stuff like that, 700 BC, in the form of Assyrians go? Anywhere they want. And if they want Yamani, and he's escaped from them, and he's with the Sudanese, they're coming there. And the Sudanese say, here, we got a little present for you. You do with him what you want. They probably flayed him alive, or impaled him, or maybe both, and maybe burned him. They had all sorts of little tricks that they pulled. Crucifixion, I'm amazed they didn't invent it. Apparently the Persians, a couple of hundred years later, invented it. But at any rate, there's this story about the Greeks, coming through there. The Sea Peoples got beaten. That is about 712 BC. I'm figuring about 586 BC the Dorians got loose, because something hit the world. Something thumped the world. I don't care. You can look in the Bible, and we were talking about Velikovsky. One of the things Velikovsky got right is he said, Sennacherib became a little bit, I think he started ruling Assyria 704 BC. He was laying siege to Jerusalem, and I think the story goes he was encamped in Lachish, or however you want to mispronounce it. And the story, now I understand, I'm an agnostic, I don't believe in God. The story goes, while he was camped overnight, it was the Passover, night of the Passover, I guess, and so you can date it. The problem is, what year is it? And some people had already dated before Velikovsky did it at 586 BC. The date and the year. And the story goes, an angel of the Lord